2. Welcome to Vibe Unit. This is session 73. Vibe Unit is a live music broadcast and launch pad for creatives of all types. Our aim is to build community and facilitate creativity. Vibe Unit is a passion project that was started by John and I. We operate on a fairly small budget and the donations we receive from our viewers. So contributions are welcome. We're trying to see what kind of growth we can achieve with a community. If you enjoy what you hear today, please follow us on all our social media platforms. We have YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram. The list goes on. It's a long list. You can find us on any of those. And if you'd like to be on an episode of Vibe Unit, the email is media@vibeunit.com. And we have a great episode for you today. I'm down here with John. It's just him and I. And we're going to get to it. Enjoy. I brought my tracker again. And I was informed before we started streaming that sometimes the things I create on the tracker are hard to follow, which is fine. I didn't take that as negative criticism. That was a matter-of-fact statement. But in light of that, I have constructed something simpler.
What do you got?
For us to jam over. Let's hear it. It's pretty...
Kitty's joining us.
Oh,
hello,
good.
baby.
So we do have a guest today.
We do.
Everyone, I'd like you to meet Kitty.
This is Kitty.
Studio cat. If you don't have a studio cat, get one.
Highly recommended.
I cannot have one.
Hi, baby. Yep. What should I play today, Kitty?
Yeah, where's Kitty going? What's she?
Guitars, I'm thinking.
Good choice.
Play me the thing again.
Yeah, I'll play it. It's pretty ethereal.
to go through the trouble of creating like an entire like instrument and everything on there in order to just like pull in audio and just like loop it over a section, or like can that function kind of as a looper? Is it, what's the workflow like for that?
It's not like a looper in the sense that you would be able to create it and hit a button and it starts looping. But it is a looper in the sense that you can record a sample, immediately put it in your palette of samples in the project and use it right away. Granted, you've timed it correctly.
Sure.
Pretty easy to do. I also can take patterns that I've laid down and I can render out those patterns. So you can, in a sense, loop the pattern as its own audio file if you want.
Got it.
So
I'm trying to think. So I'm because I'm basically over here trying to decide like what to blend, and it's weird because part of me goes, I hear some bass lick stuff, and then part of me goes, ooh, but a little bit of like guitar ambience might be nice. So I don't know. What do you want?
I was thinking guitar is like the top runner on terms of what I want, and then second to that is what you'd rather do.
I'll go to guitar.
So
we don't have a mic. I'm still waiting on a mic stand to come in shipping for the guitar cabinet.
For this one here, okay.
Yeah. And that's what my pedal chain's hooked into.
Oh, shit.
So I have only minimal adjustment capability on the
right
device.
Dang. Well, I guess it's up to how much work you want to do.
Let me just let her run for a minute. Let me
Alright,
go over there and see what I can rustle up.
I love that kick sound. It's really nice.
I like that it's like definitely pushed back, but it's also really present.
Present, yeah.
Like it's warm and big, but it's not like super clicky.
I'll mute it. My bad.
Here.
This song kind of reminds me of like you're traveling through space. C minor. We were discussing how it has a similar sound to the Doom soundtrack. I thought it sounded kind of like Halo a little bit, but it still fits in line with that like space, like future Earth, future space exploration feeling, like isolation, loneliness, like we're on a spaceship.
In Doom, they would use this kind of thing to set a mood to like make you think, like basically to set up suspense, right? Because there'd be times where you'd be running around like there'd be a lot of action going on, and that's when the like it's basically Megadeth, like type riffs, But the times when it isn't that, it's like this.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So it's like this super big contrast. Even in the old games, where all the soundtracks were like MIDI instruments, they had that kind of contrast. Hi, Kitty.
I like adding in the whistle sound every once in a while if I slide the alchemy pad.
Well, I like that.
It's like just a little bit of ambience there.
Yeah, that's really nice.
I just kind of fell into this sounding really sonically pleasing today. Because it's not always easy to get there with all the different pieces of gear. We run all of our channels through a reverb, so we, in a sense, are creating like a room that feels a certain way or has a certain sound. Everything kind of glues together in that reverb.
What's your tempo?
164.5.
I can't do it
Mm,
between. So I'll get close. I'll just say 160.
it doesn't have to be that. That was what the original sample I sliced up was, and it's sliced now, so it doesn't make a difference. What did you end up with? 65? I'm gonna switch to
My
yours.
main problem right now is I might have to pull out my phone and see if I can get it to work through there. I can't figure out how to unbypass the delay.
Oh,
Like I
no.
have it in the chain for this sound.
That's the thing with those I'm gonna cut this for a sec. That is a problem with those because you're not always gonna want to use a smartphone to access the interface.
That's true. Well, to be honest, the interface is usually pretty good,
Yeah.
but this thing is not made for like
On the fly stuff.
yeah, like I would have a hard time picturing a scenario in which you would use it where like you're playing it at a gig and you're like switching between sounds on the fly.
What's the market then for that?
The market is like it's an all-in-one. You can sit somewhere and all you need is it. Because keep in mind, if we weren't running the headphone out through a DI, it would has a couple of they're small but some speakers in it. So it's basically this plus an instrument is enough to get you passable. In a room playing with some folks, whatever.
Yeah.
They do make models that are a little bigger too. Like the first one of these I ever played was the version they make for I think maybe it wasn't even specifically for bass, but it
Yeah.
was it's a version that has a bigger speaker in it.
Okay.
But the same interface, roughly the same modeling and all that, and I really liked it. I thought it sounded great. I played bass through it, and I felt like it was able to get me the character and grit that I want out of a bass amp that you wouldn't get if it's not the same as like a DI bass tone. It's got a little more aggressiveness to it,
Yeah.
and maybe more of the sound of like a Sans amp with less of the mid scooped out kind of thing. So they're really versatile and they can kind of fill in for a lot of different stuff, and a lot of the out of the box presets are actually fantastic.
But when you want to
But when you want to build something yourself, they're not great. I will say this though, I think if I'm not mistaken, I've looked into it, right?
Yeah.
This is I'm actually going to find out since we're actually
let's talk about
talking
it a
to
little bit.
folks.
Yeah, what is the numbers?
So this is a Mustang GT40, right?
GT40.
So
got it.
the 40 version is, as I understand it, this has Bluetooth, and that's the only way you can control it.
Mhm.
Per se. There is a USB port on it too, and I have hooked it to a computer, but I believe that's only for doing like the
Firmware.
yes, like doing an update if
Yeah.
like new stuff comes out.
update? Okay.
You're intended to make any adjustments to the patches and presets via a smartphone app, and I believe it's just
Mm.
called Fender Tone.
And
It's
that, you can get that for you just use it your phone.
yeah,
for
it's a
it,
free
basically?
app. You just download it. I'm
And it
assuming
uses
they have it for other
Bluetooth?
things. Yeah, but I've got an iPhone, so I just grabbed the iOS version. I was kind of surprised because the download was not small. It was like a couple 100 megabytes
Why
for
though?
what effectively really high res images. Maybe I don't know.
Oh yeah.
It's a really pretty looking app. It's just
That's
it's
good.
it's like almost an essential piece if you want to make adjustments to this, because anything beyond very basic adjustments, and I find it's just kind of clunky to do on device. However, that being said, I'm glad they let you do it, because I've seen other devices where when there is no app for it anymore, it's basically just a paperweight. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I like that there's enough of an interface on it that, in theory, given the electronics continued to work, I mean, 20 years down the road, somebody could pick up one of these and create something with it, even though none of the apps, software, any of that stuff's available still.
Right.
So they have that going for them. I appreciate Fender making that decision because, like I said, I just feel a lot of folks don't do that anymore when they make like a companion app or whatever that goes with it. So I'm going to grab my phone and see if I still have the app.
Okay.
Because supposedly, I have a 2290 delay. Plus any remote. We haven't had mug talk in a while.
It's true.
Okay, there we go. So let's have a look.
It really feels so cinematic. It's beautiful. And I have the velocity set pretty high. Or
Hey, I do
low
have it.
for the EP, so if I hit a little harder, you get that
Bluetooth
sound.
connecting. God, that's a good sound.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
So, I mean, this little Mustang does have some chops, even for this kind of stuff. But this kind of sound wouldn't be possible without this app, though.
Kettering.
What's that?
Sounds like Kettering.
No, that's its own thing. Cool.
That was really cool.
I enjoyed that.
I feel like maybe in preparation for the
This-
next
Oh,
thing.
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm just too excited over here.
Yeah. We'll hold that thought though. In preparation for the next thing, I want to maybe create several little scenes like that we can go to, like in at different times. Maybe if it's just you and me again, because we always tend to find the cinematic stuff. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
That's true. Yeah, someday someone's gonna give us a film project to score, which
I'm
will
ready.
yeah, that's
I intend to use this tracker or some form of a tracker because the amount of cool like science fictiony stuff. Like if I'm thinking science fiction in a lot of the cases when we write music. Because anyway, what were you gonna say about the Fender?
there is this. I don't know. So I'm very curious whether the two are the same or not. So I'm gonna speak out of ignorance. Here.
Okay.
Fender has that series of pedals.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you remember seeing those, like at Sweetwater and that
Yeah,
kind of
they're
thing.
all like very clean looking and the color palette's nice,
right.
silvery.
So the pedals that they
shiny.
give you in here, right, with a few notable exceptions, they appear to all be like pedals that Fender makes,
Oh, okay.
which is really cool in the sense that if the pedal sounds anything like this large mod hall reverb, like I need it. But I fear that it gives you things that a real pedal couldn't possibly give you in addition, because effectively in this version I get 9 knobs, which I don't know if, I mean, in a standard, even though that one being a little bit fatter, like wider, and I don't know if they're thicker or not, but
Mhm.
like they definitely have enough room. You could maybe squeeze another couple switches or pots on there.
What are the 9 knobs they give you?
Well, they give you a level, which is what you'd expect, decay, which is I think more like reverb length in a way. Dwell, which is similar to like, have you ever used like a plate reverb?
Yeah.
Dwell's kind of like how loose the plate is in a way, like because it has like its own resonance. It almost wants to like. There's some sort of resonance.
So what
in
is
it.
dwell then? Like what is that? Like besides it being a loose.
Like how long it like grabs on, basically, like that resonance. It's really hard to describe.
Yeah, I was gonna
That's-
say it might be hard to conceptualize that.
But you find that on some reverbs. That's
Okay.
kind of how I conceptualize it. It's like how long is it like lingering there?
yeah.
And then we have diff, which, if I'm not mistaken, has to do with like the diffusion. So like how reflective are the surfaces? You know what I mean? I'm imagining if you put that higher and make it more diffuse, it's going to be less reflective. Which I would imagine to just mean you're going to get less high frequencies. And then there's a rate, which I'm not entirely sure what rate means, but given that this is modulation, I'm expecting that that's probably what it means, because the knob next to that is depth. So
Okay.
that sounds like
Ash,
mod
do you have
to
something
me.
to say?
Yes, Oak Tree said, "Love you guys."
Oh, what's
Hey,
up?
Cool. Love you guys too. Let's see here. Oh, and then they give us high cut, low cut, and a bypass, which I assume lets me feed back in like some of the non-affected signal. So you could technically do like a parallel kind of thing with this.
Oh wow. Yeah, I wonder what the one it's modeling has. Probably 3 knobs.
mean,
if
it
I had
looks-
to guess.
It looks like here. This is what they show it as.
Oh, there's 6.
Well, there's another page, right? You can scroll left and right for another set of knobs.
Gotcha.
So it's like kind of like almost like an orange color, like a bronze color. This pedal is,
okay.
but there's a bunch of ones in here too. Like, let me see. Like this one here, I don't think this is a pedal Fender makes. They're just
Mhm.
calling it 2290 delay. We all know what that is. Like,
Yeah.
there isn't a pedal version of that I'm aware of. So, haha. It's, good for you, Fender. Please make that pedal. I want to buy it. Yeah, because it's got all the modulation. So, yeah, I'm running a mod delay into a mod reverb. So,
Wow.
and then I was
mod.
and then I was exploiting the dwell and the depth of the modulation along with my trem. So that's why you're getting some of those sounds where it sounded like it was drifting way down out of tune or way up. I was using this to either like bend the string down as I was going on that eighth note pluck, or do the same going up.
That's a
Try to
sound
make
I.
it-
That's a sound I love.
Really? Okay.
With the drifting and the play.
So-
Play. Can you play an example of
yeah,
doing
yeah.
that? Yeah, I want to hear that.
So one of the things I was sitting on a lot was this thing right here.
Yep.
And if I start doing this,
Wow. Wow. That's a sound I know really well, but had never thought about how to achieve it. I'm
oh
so
shit! Now I played some bad notes and I
Oh,
said a
yeah.
bad word. I'm sorry.
well. The delay is so. Oh man. That's
I have a great question here for you guys from Oak Tree.
Sure.
what's
If
up?
you had to choose one modulation effect, what would it be?
Tape.
There you have
I
it.
don't even have to think about it. But tape's a beautiful thing because tape can pretend to be a lot of things.
Yep. It could be a vibrato.
It could be a compressor.
Yep.
It could be an exciter, like a saturator. You
Yep.
know, because when it starts to overload, it does very interesting things sonically.
John, you always say your desert island pedal or effect, I guess.
It's
you'd
really
say.
just a
It's
tape. Is a tape.
Yeah.
Is a tape machine.
And John and I are both obsessed with tape.
So yeah, we'd like to find like a reel to reel
We
or
would
something
love
like
that,
you know what I
yeah.
mean, and start there. Because from what I've read, like the actual big tape machines that people still have around that used to be used back in the day for making records, like they're cool, right? But like you basically need an in-house guy to service it, or you have to get smart about figuring out how
Yeah,
to work on it
I mean,
yourself
they have
because
so
they're
many-
not simple. And
And you have to source parts for them. And they're mechanically difficult to maintain.
I even saw a video made with Bob Clearmountain about that, and he was at Apogee Studios with Andrew Master, and it was interesting because he had a tape machine in there, which doesn't surprise me, right? Because a lot of the records he worked on in his career were on those sorts of tape machines. But it turns out the reason he had one there is just to be able to take old tapes and bring them into Pro Tools, to like turn them into like digital multi-tracks of whatever was on the tape, just for archival purposes or whatever. And I think, if I recall, Andrew was asking him like could you use this or whatever, because it was a 24 track, if I recall.
Holy cow.
It's just like it's kind of your standard machine that you would have found in these places. And he goes, no, I really hope I wouldn't have to do a record with this, because apparently on that particular model the race head is very far from the record head, so it's very hard to do punch-ins, because like the tape splicing is like you got to be apparently some sort of wizard to know the exact distances
Yeah.
of everything, because they're not next to each
It's
other.
not, and with the modern amenities, it's hard to go back to that.
Like
type
even
of
the guys
delay
that are into
extent.
tape,
Yeah.
are like, unless you have basically the right machine
Mhm.
with the remote control deck and the ideal head to set up, I don't really even want to mess with it.
Right.
And like I said, the guys that are really still loving tape, like I think Steve Albini is still doing it extensively, but he's got guys, and he himself is an engineer that likes tape, and I'm sure he knows more about those machines than the average person knows
Yeah.
about their own hand. I mean, the guy is just a genius, but that's the medium he likes, so of course he's invested in keeping it alive, at least for himself. So that's cool. I think tape is the thing that'd be most fun to play with, but I'm with you. Like there aren't enough of the modern amenities to make good use of anyone
It'd be
else's
fun
time if
to
you're working with them, but it's very, very fun to experiment with.
Yeah, I'd see the purpose of it being more in terms of reel-to-reel machines and real tape and all that. I see it more as like a learning opportunity to kind of see how it used to work and like
It
maybe-
sure makes you appreciate
That's the
Logic
other
and
part of-
stuff, doesn't it, though?
Yep, that's the other part I was going to mention. Like you appreciate more of some of the modern tools that are based on that workflow.
And I still think learning some of that stuff is worth it. Like knowing some of the history and heritage, even if you don't ever use the gear or anything, it's like I've found for myself with a lot of the gear, you find out there's just better versions of it nowadays. Just that's the straight up truth. Unless you're going after a certain character, you probably don't even want that old cool piece of gear, right?
Right.
That being said, given that so much of the plugin world is modeled after those sorts of pieces of kit, if you have a basic knowledge of what some of those things are that are really common and popular, you know, we'll just say like maybe the top 25 kind of rack devices that might exist in a studio, and you basically have a great knowledge now of plugins too,
True.
because usually those are, even if the controls aren't laid out the same, they're trying to pretend to be that thing a little bit.
And they typically label things similarly enough where you can.
Like Logic does that, for example,
Yeah.
right? Like Mike and I personally are Logic users. I used to be a Pro Tools guy and actually switched to Logic, which interestingly, not a lot of guys go that direction, but it made sense
It
for
made
me,
sense,
right?
yeah.
And it's very interesting because, like in everything else, if you have some knowledge of what those things are, you immediately know what you're looking at, right? Like if you pull up a Logic, say the bass amp or something, right? When they give you the microphone choices, it's like, are they going to call it a Sennheiser or anything? No, they're just going to say it's a Dynamic 421. We know what that is.
They
It's
give
a
you enough
Sennheiser.
yeah.
It's a Sennheiser 421.
Yeah. Give you enough information to figure out. The amps are like that too.
Or like,
You know?
or sorry, not a Sennheiser, an AKG.
Yeah, all the amps are like that in there for the guitars, and compressors are kind of like that, you know.
Yeah.
When we made that connection,
like
or I think
what, like
you explained
vintage
it to me.
opto. Like, what do we think that is?
Yeah.
Like, what's the most well-known vintage like optical compressor, like in an LA2A?
When you explained that to me, that I think the first way I learned that Logic does that is through the amplifiers, the guitar amps. You start to realize you can go back and read the manuals of those amps and kind of learn a little bit more about the Logic plugins because there's similar features and stuff on them.
I am gonna say though, if anybody out there is getting into Logic and has been frustrated by the amp designer, what you need to know is the knobs on there are, in a sense, will just 0 to 10 minimum value of whatever the digital thing is, maximum value of whatever the digital thing is. They are not modeling the knobs
The
on
curve, the exponential curve, or whatever the curve is.
nothing. There's nothing.
Yeah.
The knobs are not one-for-one replicas.
You have to use your ears a little
Yes.
bit.
But if you know that the knobs are connected to the same thing, right? Like the bass knob is still controlling bass. It's just 6 on this knob is not going to sound like 6 on the amp. So you're going to need to turn it while you're listening to it and go, okay, now it sounds like the amp.
Yep. Yeah.
So having
that's a
good references to go against to double check yourself on that is good, but they are actually incredibly decent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying there's nothing better. Obviously, there's great alternatives that exist out there, and some paid, some not. But for what comes in the box, it is more than acceptable if you have any idea like what you're actually going for, and you just go by what it sounds like, not the numbers, right? Because they don't work like actual amps in that regard.
That ought to be quite relieving for people who tend to get what's the terminology where you feel like you need something to complete something. You have to buy an amp or buy something to have what you need. You know, maybe that will alleviate some of our viewers' pain that think they need to buy like a certain plugin because of X, Y, and Z. You might want to still buy that plugin for whatever reason, but also I like how you put it. You know, you can get away with a lot with Logic's amps. So
especially if we're talking about in a mix, you know what I mean? Like I showed you a thing. I think it might have been last week or the week before. It's just a little like kind of genty, you know, modern metal-ish kind of riff thing I was working on, and that is using basically in the box tools for guitar, because it turns out in a mix it's not nearly you really almost can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
Now I'm using IRs that I like, right? Like I've built up a library of various impulse responses of guitar cabinets that I like, which is a big part of what a guitar sounds like.
What is the IR, like, what is it? It's like the cab, right? Is that what that's simulating? Like if you had
it's basically simulating
like a space,
like a change of a signal, the change of a signal over time.
Okay.
But in a fixed window, if you will. So what happens is it's like a transform that if you apply that same thing, you basically the way you get an IR is you feed. Usually it's like a frequency sweep or noise or some sort of known frequency response, right?
Mm-hmm.
You feed that into the front end of whatever chain, and this doesn't just work for amps. This works for really anything that has any of its own character to impart sonically, in theory. Some things don't really model this way well, like for example what transformers do to your low end. which sometimes is really, really pleasant. It's really hard to do that with an IR. I've never seen any that can really
is the
impart
purpose
sound
of them? Because I've always used, because I know there's IRs with amps and there's IRs with like reverbs.
Think of it as like most people are familiar with like photo filters on apps, right? Think of it as something like that. Like it's
that's a good way
something
to
where
think about it.
where you just feed in some kind of signal and it's going to try to like turn that into
But would you say
something
like
else.
in like a condensed way of explaining what it does? Is it kind of like simulating a space you're in, or like is it kind of simulating?
No, it's
like, a room?
simulating everything from the place the signal left from
Mhm.
to the place the signal is listened to. So say you were going to do a guitar amp IR, right?
Okay. Yeah. What would you do?
Typically, if you were trying to emulate an entire chain, not just say the amp or just the cabinet, the way you'd make the IR is you'd feed the sweep into the very front of the amp, right, at whatever settings are you think sound good,
Mhm.
and then mic up a cab the way
Okay.
you think the cab's supposed to sound, like as you'd be playing through it normally. And then once you've got all that the way you want, then you run the sweep through it, and what it's doing is it's listening on the other end to that input from that mic, and it's basically seeing what's the difference between them, and it models that that
Oh.
difference, and so then you can apply that difference to any other thing.
How
And
do you know anything about the history of how they came up with that, or like how would they do that?
I mean, it's basic. Like in a sense, it's like
like coming up with that's pretty amazing,
the
actually.
thing that makes it possible is like digital sampling and what they call a fast Fourier transform, which is like a way of analyzing audio and
Yeah.
dividing it up into like chunks of frequency bands,
Okay.
and then coming up with some math about how they're all going to be affected, and then doing that math in parallel across all those chunks of spectral width.
Sounds like some Code Monkey stuff.
It can be,
Yeah.
this is mostly stuff that came out, This is not like some sort of vintage tech, right? Like
Yeah, it's
impulse
pretty new.
response and modeling is something that has only started to become, let's put it this way, mainstream enough that someone like you or I could build IRs only pretty recently.
In layman's terms,
And things that can use them also, things that are consumers of these sorts of resources are only starting to really become popular too. Like this box we use for acoustic guitar,
yeah,
its only purpose in life is to pretend to be a flash drive and hold 10 or 12 impulse responses, and they could be anything.
So to condense it down to something simple, I'd say you have like your speaker, you have your microphone, and whatever the difference is from when it left the speaker and
Technically,
compared to what the input of the microphone
when
is,
it
they
left the
compare 'em?
output, I'm saying it'll model everything all the way through.
Yeah,
Like you could make an IR of a pedal chain.
yeah.
So it won't
it's-
work for wet effects very well because that's the time scale on them is way too long. Most IRs, like the longest ones you'll find, are like maybe I think 800 milliseconds or something,
Mhm.
and that's considered crazy long
Yeah.
for applications like this.
So whatever's behind the speaker compared to whatever the input of the mic is, they do some math, some coding or whatever, and whatever the difference is, that becomes the IR, and then you can simulate different things through it, like or put different instruments through it, simulating
Yeah,
that.
put really any
it-
source through it and simulate
and
the
it runs-
effect of
it-
that source being fed through that same signal chain.
So if you were to play let's say you were running something out of your speaker cab over there, and it would do the frequency sweep through all the things behind it, behind the speaker that come out, hit the microphone. Microphone brings it back to the computer. Now I don't want to hear the frequency sweep anymore. I want to hear what the guitar sounds through it. Your guitar would simulate would put that math on it, and then it would tell you what it sounds
yeah,
like.
you'd need like a plug-in or something that can load an impulse response or a pedal or like a multi-effect that has the ability to load IRs.
That's
but
sweet.
yeah,
That's
the thing
amazing.
is,
That's
though-
actually really like futuristic sounding to me. Like the fact you can simulate. I bet the file sizes for IRs are pretty small, I would guess.
They're tiny because, like I
Yeah.
said, in reality, most of them are, like I said, a quarter-second IR is considered long. Like I don't think this box can even load IRs that are longer than maybe 200 or
So-
something.
Is the work very noisy to create IRs? Like in a real sense, like because you have to run a
Okay,
frequency
so-
sweep real loud.
It
through an
depends.
amp,
It
right?
depends what you're doing. It's
Oh,
it's
okay.
so dependent on everything because you and what you're trying to model.
Well, I guess it doesn't matter. It's just what
But-
are you trying to do?
But like I said, everything you include in the chain is going to end up in that IR. So I'm saying, like, say you only wanted to model a speaker cabinet,
Yeah.
right, alone.
You have
If you really wanted just the speaker cabinet, you'd want and understand this is utopian. This doesn't exist in the world, but a perfectly flat mic to capture
Perfectly
what the cab sounded like, and a perfectly good D to A feeding a sweep out into it, and theoretically an amp that's linear from 0 to, I don't know, 20,000 hertz or whatever, right? So if that was
conditions have to
theoretically
be
the case,
perfect.
all you'd get at the end of the day with that math, assuming all the gain is accounted for, would just be the character of the speaker and the box it's in, etc., whatever. But the thing is, those conditions don't exist anywhere, period. So, and to be fair, if you were to hear what just the cab sounded like as the IR at the end of your chain, you'd go, that's certainly not it. Well, it's because we're all conditioned to hear it in a room
Yeah.
with space and, you know, all this kind of thing. So there's more that goes into the character
so
and
actually
the sound of it than just
the
the speaker.
imperfection is actually like the way it carries through the room is also part of the IR, right?
It
Or
can
sh-
be.
or-
I mean,
or
because it's going to be
people-
picked up by the mic, right?
It seems like that would be like a likable trait because you want to hear what it sounds like in a
Yes,
room.
and this is why it's become so powerful, right?
Yeah.
Because in addition, so keep in mind once again that we said that everything included in this IR creation chain is included in this end impulse response that you get at the end of the day. It's interesting to note that because of that, you now can kind of have a collection of things that you don't even own, right? Because if somebody's made me IRs that are cabinets that I like with various different amps, you know, they made a different one. Here's a Mesa, like here's mine. This is a Mesa 2x12, right, with vintage 30s in it, right? Here's a Mesa 2x12 with vintage 30s. Here's what it is with a 57, you know, an inch off the right in this, you know, setter nuts on the cone. Here's the same. Here's another IR of it, but the mic's
And
been
we have
moved
some
an
of
inch
those in
out.
our
Whatever.
shared file that we
I've
look
got
at.
tons of this
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I use it very heavily, right?
Yeah.
Because there's times where I want to record my own amp and reamp something, whatever. There are other times where I say I can mimic this chain identically in software and actually have more control over it using and consistency, being able to just use the same pieces. So it can be very interesting too, because once you've gotten to that point, what if you decide there's something you would rather change? It's like I could audition the same cab with 10 different mics and get some idea of what that character is going to sound like before even taking the time to like physically set it up. Do you get what I'm saying? So
Yes, I do.
because
That's
there's no
powerful.
limit to how many of these things you could make, effectively changing just a small amount of the variables every time, and it just becomes a collection of, think of it as snapshots of moments in time
That's-
of that gear through that chain, whatever.
That's really
Um,
interesting.
Very powerful. It's also very powerful for doing like for modeling real spaces too.
Yeah, like the reverb
longer
thing.
IRs is used for what they call convolution, which is a type of reverb. It's actually probably my favorite type of reverb, other than we'll just call them really crappy digital early reverbs, which I just like because they're gritty and grainy and don't sound like any real space. That's its own. That's its own reward for another reason. But in terms of like trying to make something really sound like it's somewhere, I don't think there's any substitute for convolution, because it's an actual like rough mathematical representation of putting that source in that space, and then what would it sound like.
Yeah.
But you get control over it, you know, like how much of it you want, basically.
Wow.
So it's
Well,
one of the more groundbreaking pieces, I think, of
That's pretty.
tech
yeah.
really that's come around, because understand that in the early days of like pedals, where a lot of them, I remember some of these, I remember like Behringer for a while made some DIs that had a switch on the side that had like a cabinet simulator, which as far as I understand it was just a little bit of analog EQ, like roll a bunch of the high end off, maybe. You know what I mean? Like just approximate what a speaker cone would do. But even that, it's like you'd be shocked how much that will improve up something that sounds really gritty and digital and nasty. You know what I mean? And a lot of them just had that kind of thing, a little bit of EQ to kind of polish it up. And then the convolution, you know, and IRs came into the game, and it's like everybody was just like blown away. Because
Yeah.
like I said, you could be sitting in a bedroom and now you got a mic locker with, you know, you got an equipment room with, you know, 25 amps and, you know, 50 cabinets and, you know, 160 microphones. And it's like, I mean, even somebody
It's
like
all
like
now
us,
down to micro kilobytes. You know, you take all that
like
studio
even
space
like
used
folks
to
like
need
you and I that would love to geek out on like actually seeing and touching that
Right.
kind of gear. Like, where would I put that? You know what I mean?
Ash,
So
what do you
there's-
got for
there's
us?
Something for it.
Oak Tree said that's why a DI is key to the studio. Never know when you'll want to reamp a signal.
Yeah, you just
you
might
go.
want to try something different, you know?
Like it. Like
and
it,
even
love
if
it.
it's even if it's just for the purpose of saying like we're gonna audition this and say, ooh, I do like that kind of setup more. It's like, well, maybe we should try setting it up that way then.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know. It's a thought.
Beautiful. Well, cool. I like nerding out a little bit.
Me too. Now that we've lost everyone who isn't like, ooh, audio stuff. We should make some audio, you know what I'm saying?
We should. I mean, we could just default back to where we were. See, it just everything in this sounds so good. I'm afraid to change it.
I'm just over here feeding toggle switch noise into a delay.
I wonder if I can just make another drum beat real fast.
Isn't this the same key?
Yeah. You want a different key? I can do that too.
Then it seems like we're being creative and different, you know what I mean?
All right, let's do that. But I need to make sure that I take the drum that I just created, because this is without any of the filtering. That was what was.
I gotta
underneath
say,
everything.
that kick drum is filthy.
There's some really good sounds in here. Tell me if any of these stand out to you.
That's pretty good.
I like that one too.
That could be a really good, like, absolutely destroyed snare.
Yeah, it was really cool because it's got all that grit in it, all the distortion and stuff, and that works really
What's
well
this?
when
It's
it's
called-
fan passed.
Dude, I just found a patch that's called SynthWiz. What do you think it has on it? It says,
Pinball,
Octobot and Big Fuzz
pinball machine.
and a step filter, which I don't even know what that is. I feel dumb.
It instead of filtering like in a clean sweep like a sine wave, it goes in steps, a certain amount of like.
Oh, like with an LFO?
Mhm.
Oh, interesting.
Alchemy, I've learned how to use the Alchemy's version of that, and I'll have to show you some point. It's actually really crazy effective. For
Would
some
you believe I
things.
still haven't fixed my alchemy library? I got so mad the other day and I still didn't fix it.
All right, let me just set this to a bandpass filter.
What is this?
That's
Hold on.
cool. Oh, that's gonna sound really good with what I'm making. So. Yeah, it sounds like a pinball machine from like the Pinball Wizard by the Who. Maybe it is supposed to be that. All right, let's see.
I don't like it anymore. It's too
Yeah,
dirty.
It kind of puts you into like a rut a little bit. If Jack
It
White was here,
pigeonholes me for sure.
if Jack White was here, he'd probably figure out a way to exploit it to its fullest
Oh,
potential.
sure. What's this? Irish anthems? What do you think that means?
Probably something to do with Irish anthems.
Oak Tree said sounds like a mouth harp.
Yeah, kinda. What is? See, some of these I don't even need to go there. Like, I know it's good. Like, this is a Fender modeling amp, right? You know, basic 65 twin. That's gonna be good. Basic 65 Princeton. Yeah, it's gonna be good. They got a 57 Champ, 57 Deluxe, 57. Man, I should stop talking about this until they should send me some of this stuff, and then I'll talk about it, right? And how's this supposed to work?
Supposed to. Let's see. That's a C, so that's what we were in. Let's go down to A.
Basic Shimmer. Oh wait, basic
Bring it
Octave.
down an
Let's see
octave.
what this does.
Builds up really fast.
Weirdly, I'm kind of into this octave thing.
What you got? Ooh. Hold I see where you're going, sort of. I like half understand what you're doing. Let's see.
Oak Tree asks, which octave pedal do you guys recommend?
I don't have a recommendation.
I gotta
you
be
have one?
honest, not really. So
Yeah.
there's apparently different ways to do octave. I personally like the more digitally ones better in a weird way. So I haven't played, like I've used a lot of pitch shifters. I can tell you this. I think it's called Alter Boy is the one from Sound Toys that I use a lot. That's a pitch shifter.
Is that a program?
That's a plugin,
A
yeah.
plugin?
But I don't actually personally own a pitch shifting pedal other than various multi effects that have a pitch shifter in them. So I'm actually very ignorant of that.
I'm
of
pretty
that world in
ignorant
general.
to it as
Other
well.
than there's one exception. This is maybe not so much just a pitch shifter, but I know you're already aware, but
Yep.
I'll say for our folks, one of my favorite sounds of all time that I've ever heard just in a pedal, and it may be pigeonholed, maybe not. I've never actually spent a bunch of extended time with one, but Walrus made a pedal called, I believe it was called Descent, and what it is it is like a shimmer reverb basically of sorts, but it's really thick and really dark, and you have control over, I want to say it's an octave above, an octave below, and like a doubling. So it's like a combination of a great dark cavernous type reverb mixed with like an Electro-Harmonix Pog, I guess.
Yeah,
kind of, or like a small section of one, maybe like a micro Pog mixed with a reverb, right? But that is a really attractive pedal for doing the kind of like, octave up, octave down things. If you're playing the kind of ambient stuff we're doing, that one I actually do know something about. But I know like I said, the Pogs are considered to be, for octave related effects specifically, they're considered to be the best out there. Probably are the most popular, right? Because the full size version will give you, I think, like an octave. I think you get a unison or a couple of them, an octave below, 2 octaves below, and the same above, with like a fader. I think like a slider for each kind of thing. I mean, they're pretty intense. But for getting more complex octave type effects, that's a popular one. I see those still on people's boards. I don't know that anyone's done anything groundbreaking in that world. I feel like a lot of the focus is on the software and plugin side of things now, but that's still a really popular one, and they do have like a mini version for all you mini pedal folks.
There is I have sort of an answer based on what John said, but in my case, I've never gone out and bought an octave pedal before, but they seem to be like additional things you can get on other pedals. So 2 experiences I have with that is Walrus, another pedal. They have the slow, and they have the dark mode, which puts an octave below in the reverb. It's not truly an octave in the sense of what we were probably asked, but I find that, just based on my experience to answer the question, I like when effect pedals do that. Then also the Oceans 12, which I have, has a mode that takes it a step further, which is called poly mode, and you can actually change different intervals, and you can actually do more than just what an octave pedal does.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like the full size Pog and stuff lets you set, like, is it fifths or thirds or octaves or whatever, right?
Does the whammy, like the pedal or whatever, that that classic thing that everyone seems to use for like
the red Digitech
the
pedal?
red thing, that you could just kick that thing up and it would theoretically
Those
it blend?
can do some of those things too. I mean, those are basically like, as I understand it, I've never personally had one. I've used one before, but I think they're almost just like any of these other Digitech pedals, but they just do those types of effects.
Okay.
You know what
And
I
you
mean?
have a pedal
So
technically
I think
here
you
that does that.
You can kind of adjust certain stuff about it.
Cool.
Like I know that doesn't have to be an octave. You know, I know it can push up thirds or
Yeah.
you know, you can bend down instead of up. I know people who used to use those before they made pedals that could like drop your tuning. I've seen people literally use those on a pedal board just to make the signal go down like 2 steps or whatever before it goes into the amp. It's just weird. Some of that early tech that Digitech was kind of just on top of and didn't really get a lot of recognition for, I feel like. This lets me set the pitch. Hold on. This says chromatic pitch shifter. I think I can do anything I want with this.
Whoa.
It's incense.
Wow. That's so bizarre to think you're controlling that with your phone right now. That's
Yeah, it's
kind of
super
trippy.
unresponsive and pissing me off though.
Oh, is it? I was assuming
And all
it
these
was
controls,
instant.
they're all sliders. You can't type in numbers. So something like a pitch, it's a super sensitive and unresponsive slider that I got to get right to 1200 if I want an octave up. It's like, I don't know. It's not great.
In my head, I had an ideal situation where you were instantly changing it.
No, it's barely responding to my movements. Right there, it finally caught up after I'd been moving it, wondering if it was even doing anything. Which I guess for glitchy kind of stuff might be cool. Why won't it just go to 1200, dude? This is infuriating. Like, if you're not gonna let me just type in a number.
Okay. So, give me about. Keep jamming, John. I want to kind of compliment that sound a little bit more. I don't want to stay on the ambient thing much longer. I'm thinking we're going to move to that. Or what I perceive is what you're trying to do. Sounds like a kalimba or like a steel drum up there at the top. Play like plucky stuff up there. Sounds like a, you know, we got the island groove. Okay, other progression.
It's just weird, man. I wish I could do the 1 octave thing, but it literally won't let me.
Yeah, dude, that's sick. Oh yeah, dude. May I color up these chords a little bit over here? Okay. There it is. On the other part, hold up.
Are we going ambient again? What's going
No,
on?
no, no, no.
No, it's gonna be a hard energy to.
I was just getting that other part. Here we go. This is like an A minor feel. And then one more bar of that. Now it's gonna go that part we were just on. Back to the A minor. One, two, other part. That sounds really good. Kind of getting in the way right now. Okay, hang on that pattern for a little bit. Alright, here we go. Moving on. Stay there. Stay again. Oh, that's sick, John. Moving on. A minor. That's sick. That was fun, dude.
I dig that.
Well, I feel like that's all I can offer. I can offer today. That was a good session.
Yeah, man.
We're at 120.
Cool.
That's about
That's
on
a good
target,
start.
right?
Yeah, that's a
We're
good.
kind of saying we want to like
We
keep
want to
it
be
concise, maybe about like an hour and a half, right? Like
Yep.
even that's no, there's no expectation that folks would watch all of it. You know, there's a
Right.
lot going on. And there's low moments, high moments, whatever, right? But yeah, I think keeping it down to that makes it a little bit more digestible.
You got oak tree dancing.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, that it is sitting right now. Like that feel, that whole sound, I could sit in that for a minute. You know?
That was mall jazz. I feel like I'd hear that at like a food court in the mall, or like coming from a hair salon in the 90s.
I get the feeling that it's like what they'd put up when they go to the wide shot at like a sports tournament or something. They go to the blimp shot and put up what's coming
No.
up. What's coming
Yes,
up, like
but
the
hold
next
on.
stuff, like here's the schedule for the afternoon. No one's talking. It's just the music's rolling while they
I know
let
what
it
it is.
show for like 10 seconds and then go to commercial.
I know exactly what it is. It's Weather Channel, dude. It's Weather Channel music,
Yeah.
baby.
That's it.
Wow.
It's that Weather Channel music.
That's still a thing, right? I don't have cable, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't know.
Oh, it's got to be. If it isn't, it should be, and we'll
The-
make it.
The only thing I know is the Weather Channel as a company still exists, and they bought my favorite weather company. So like I guess that was like the first I'd heard of Weather Channel in a while. I was like, oh, they're still kicking, all right. So do they
Well,
still do that? Is that still a thing? Like you just
yeah.
go to a channel and there's that kind of music and like
yes,
someone telling you what the weather's gonna be like for the next 5 days?
I'm pretty sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so well, thank you for tuning in, folks. We have really, really felt the support, and we love hearing from all of you.
If you know somebody at the Weather Channel, don't be afraid to just just casually suggest that you might know someone who would be interested in scoring the weather. Just put that under your hat.
We're gonna be back next Sunday. This was a really good day. I really enjoyed the conversation and the music. What's up?
If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to speak too soon, but I'm pretty sure Nick's coming through, and I'm pretty sure he's bringing a couple of folks.
Oh,
Um.
that's awesome.
So yeah, I don't know the
Potentially
details yet, but we were
next week.
talking about it earlier in the week, so we'll see what comes of that.
Nick, if you do come by, I have a pedal board for you.
Yes.
You have to get that so I don't have to have it in my truck anymore or my Jeep.
Perfect.
So we'll see you all next week, same time, roughly, maybe more guests here. And yeah, that's it.
Sounds good. That's what 73 in the books.
If you know any musician friends, share this with them if they're interested in this kind of stuff. We had some really cool music, and we also had some nerdy gear talk. So if you know anyone who's interested in that kind of thing, spread the word. We're really trying to get the word out there that we do this, and we want more participation and more people involved. That's a dream of John's and mine to eventually be able to just to facilitate and launch musicians and connect people in a greater community.
Absolutely. That's
So,
what we're here for. So
so see you next week.
that'll do it for us.